So today let us going to learn about a new concept called as withholding tax. So anybody have any idea what is a withholding tax? What is the use of withholding tax? Why businesses have withholding taxes? Or what are the withholding taxes? Withholding taxes are TDS and TCS in India. Not all in all the countries TDS and TCS come under withholding tax. I mean, not all countries have TDS and TCS, right? So most of the times withholding tax is a you can say it as a TDS. TDS means suppose you are liable to pay the employee salary amount, but what business does is business will exclude the tax amount and pay the salary to the employee. So what business do with the tax amount that is excluded from the salary of the employee? The tax amount to the tax authority or the income tax authority, who is the actual authority for those collection of taxes on the uh, e- salary revenue or the incomes earned by the employees. That is what called as withholding tax. Not only the TDS, I mean the income tax, there are also situations in different countries where TDS is deducted on certain services from the certain services of vendors as well as provided by the vendors. Actually, it's majorly on the side of accounts payable only. There won't be withholding taxes on the side of customer or on the accounts receivable side. Mostly the withholding tax is on the accounts payable side. Okay. So in the scenario of withholding taxes, generally in the normal scenario of sales taxes, what we will do, we will we will apply some sales tax on the particular purchase order invoice or a vendor invoice journal. And what we will do is we will pay that amount to the vendor at the end. So vendor will be added with a liability of subtotal amount of invoice plus the tax amount, which we have to settle to the vendor at one point of time. The vendor will collect the tax from us and pay to the authority. But in case of withholding taxes, we are not going to pay the vendors the amount of withholding tax. We will only withhold it or keep it with ourselves. Or keep business will withhold the tax amount and pay the remaining amount to the vendor in the settlement of invoice. What we do with the tax amount that we withhold, or what business do with the tax amount that they withhold without paying to the vendor, they have to pay it to the tax authority or they have to settle it with the tax authority at one point. That's what withholding taxes are up to. Withholding tax not paid to the vendor, it is held by this amount directly to the authority. That's what. So they might pay it monthly or they might pay it quarterly or annually. Depends again how often they are paying it to the tax authorities. Okay. This is what withholding taxes are in business. So let's see what kind of configurations we have in withholding taxes, at which place withholding tax is deducted and how it is accounted. Okay. So in order to learn about the configurations, I'll just go to the same module. Sorry, mostly the same company. And then to tax module here. Then under indirect taxes, we have withholding tax. So we have withholding tax codes and withholding tax groups. Again, okay, that's what we have withholding tax codes and withholding tax groups, but under setup, we don't have any. Okay. So you can create some withholding tax codes and withholding tax groups. Let me click on withholding tax codes first. There are only two configurations in this. Just click on new. Let's create a withholding tax code. You have to give a main account for the withholding tax payable account that you have to give here, since you withheld the liability, or you will withheld the amount of tax and you have to pay it to the vendor. It's a liability for us. So you have to give a main account here. I'll just create one withholding tax payable account. It should be a liability account, right? So I'll create it as payable. I'll just call it as a liability since it's a payable. And the most important is, for this main account, we have to give this posting type. For sales tax accounts, we gave posting type as sales tax, right? For withholding tax, we have to give the sales account posting type as withholding tax, as you can see here. This one, posting type is withholding tax for this main account. Then save it. Then this is the account number, 2,92,000. Go back. Yes, and the account number here in the withholding tax code. Then how the amount has to be calculated on the net amount, on the gross amount. By default, it is percentage of net amount of the invoice. So it is as so. And can give a round off if you want to round off it to the nearest 10 digits, or 10 cents or 5 cents, like that. If you don't want, just leave it as it is. Rounding form is normal, or upward or downward you can give. If you are not choosing anything, you can leave it as it is. That's how. But we just gave a number as 5% and 5%, but we have to give percentage amount also as 5%. So that will be here under values. So under values here, you can give the amount of percentage of tax. So 5% tax, I just gave it here. Then I can go back. That's how I just created a withholding tax code. It's a small configuration where you just give a name to the code. Currency is by default. You can change it if you want to. And you give a main account for the withholding tax payable, which is a liability account. And then the origin of calculation is percentage of net amount. We did not change here anything. And we did not give any round off rules. If you want to give any round off rules, you can give something. So I just created this withholding tax code. Then I just go to withholding tax groups here, which is here, withholding tax group. Here you just have to do nothing. You just create new one. Just give a group name. Again, the same group name you can give, just like that. Then give withholding tax code, or link that code here. One withholding tax code, 5% set. If there is any non-detectable percentage, you could have given there in the code itself, which you have created. So you can group some codes within in the withholding tax group. So if multiple codes are applicable at a time, but if it is not such scenario, if there is only one code applicable under this group, just let it be one code. So withholding tax 5%. So that's all about the configuration actually. In this particular company, we only have two steps of configuration: withholding tax. So withholding tax codes and withholding tax groups, and then we can apply the withholding tax. Then let's see how it will get applied. But in the new version of Dynamics, there is something called as global withholding tax. So in global withholding tax, there are setups in such a way that the same way that we have in sales tax, like you can create withholding tax authority, withholding tax settlement periods, then you can create withholding tax codes, item withholding tax groups, and you can apply same like the sales tax. But I mean, the calculation will differ and the deduction will differ, but configurations for as it is like the sales tax configurations, like all these configurations are there. But just that in place of sales tax authority, we have withholding tax authority, withholding tax settlement periods, then the posting groups for withholding tax, are the main accounts for withholding taxes. Then withholding tax codes and withholding tax groups, item withholding tax groups, everything is there in the recent version, and that too if you enable a feature. If not, this process also will be the same. I mean, the calculation or the logic part will be the same, but just that the configuration slightly differ. Okay, now let's see how this withholding taxes could be applied on a vendor invoice and when the tax will be deducted. So just go back since we have done the configuration. I'll just go to accounts payable to create a vendor invoice journal. Before to that, I have to go to vendor page and give the default tax withholding tax group to the vendor. There is one particular parameter called as calculate withholding tax, so that is also should be enabled before we process with it. Suppose we have this one, Tata company. Edit this expand all. Here it is, we have calculate withholding tax under invoice and delivery menu. Can enable this one, calculate withholding tax. Then you can give withholding tax group here. Withholding tax group, withholding tax 5%. So this is compulsory. You have to enable this option, calculate withholding tax at the vendor level, and then assign the withholding tax group here. Okay. After that, we'll use this vendor to create an invoice. Now let's go on, create an invoice journal. So here we have this option of invoice journal, accounts payable, invoices, and invoice journal. Just create a new one. Select and go to lines. Then you can select the vendor account for which you have assigned a default withholding tax group. So this one, Tata company. Give an invoice date as on today's date. Invoice number you can give. And credit the vendor for like 10,000. Okay. Offset account. Select any expense account. Something like this, gift expenses I just selected. Now save it. You can notice that withholding tax somewhere here. Where is this? Generally it should be here. Withholding tax group. It's not showing up here. But however, since we have given to the vendor, it will automatically appear. So at the time of invoice, you don't have any withholding tax entry. Only at the time of payment, withholding tax is deducted and kept with the business itself. So let's see that. So let's post this one now. For now, I'm crediting the vendor for 10,000. For this particular vendor, withholding tax is being applicable. We have given it in the master level. It is posted, and you can see the voucher for the vendor invoice journal. So it's posted. The gift expense account is debited with 10,000. Accounts payable account is credited with 10,000. There is no deduction of withholding taxes here at this place. Now what I'll do is I'll just go and make a payment for this invoice. You create a payment journal to settle this invoice amount. I'll just go to accounts payable, payments and payment journal. Create new. Go to payment journal, go to lines. Then you can go to the same vendor. Okay. You can go to settle transactions to settle that particular invoice that you have created now. Which invoice that is? That should be invoice number 896, which is here. Okay. Select this invoice. As soon as you selected the invoice, you can see something here. Invoice number 896, invoice currency US dollar, settled amount in invoice currency 10,000, withholding tax code, withholding tax 5%, withholding tax in invoice currency 500. So withholding tax 5% is calculated on the 10,000 amount. There is a notification here. So when you, if you want to see the withholding tax details, you can see it here during the settlement. You select the invoice, you can see that withholding tax amount here. What it shows is invoice amount is 10,000 and withholding tax code applicable is withholding tax 5%. So this is being considered from the vendor master level where you have given the default withholding tax code. And it is calculating 500 withholding tax or deducting 500 withholding tax. Withholding tax in invoice currency, withholding tax in default currency, both of them is US dollar only, so it is showing 500. In this situation, system is withholding 500 amount and paying the remaining amount to the vendor. That's what we actually need. So you can go back to overview. Yes, we have selected this one, right? There is also some cash discount. I'll try to deduct the cash discount. I'll remove this cash discount just for the sake of example. Cash discount is not there now. Now I'll click on OK. Withholding tax is there, 500. So see what happened. When you click on the settlement, automatically the 9,500 amount is being considered here, deducting the withholding tax amount of 500 from the amount that you have to pay to the vendor. So if you pay 9,500 to the vendor, it means it's a full settlement to the vendor on that invoice of 10,000. The remaining 5,000 will be adjusted to the withholding tax payable account. We'll see that, how it will get adjusted. So then we can select a bank account to make the payment. Sorry. Close this. Select a bank account. Remove the method. Select something as electronic. Okay, and I can validate this and post it. Okay, this is asking that status must be sent. I'll keep it as sent. Then I can post it. So then it's posted. Now let's see the voucher, how the voucher is being posted. So see here the voucher posted is accounts payable is debited with 9,500, means you are paying the vendor 9,500 and that amount is deducted from your bank 9,500. So what about the remaining 500? The invoice is booked for 1,000, right? Where accounts payable account was credited for 1,000 here in the invoice voucher. If you see it, the accounts payable account is credited for 10,000 and gift expense is debited for 10,000. Whereas you are paying only 9,500 for accounts payable and bank account is created for 9,500. Then what about the remaining 500 amount? which you have to pay to the vendor. So for that, in order to see that transaction, you can click on this one, transaction origin. No, not actually that. And you can click here. Come on. Showing. 1 second. I just refreshed it. Here you have this option called all related vouchers. If you click on all related vouchers, you can see the additional voucher that got posted. This one with the generic voucher number. Accounts payable account is debited with 500 and withholding tax payable account is credited with 500. The liability on the vendor of 500 is reversed and is transferred to withholding tax payable account, which is now you are liable to pay it to the tax authority, not to the vendor. The rest of the amount 9,500 you have settled with the vendor, but the remaining amount 500 is just reversed or accounts payable account is debited and that liability is transferred to withholding tax payable account, means credited to withholding tax payable account. Both are liability accounts only. But now you are liable to pay it to the tax authority, not to the vendor. That's how. So vendor is cleared with 10,000. Total accounts payable 9,500 plus 500. 10,000 is reversed. That's what happens at the time of payment. The withholding tax amount is deducted and the rest amount is paid to the vendor through the bank settlement. You can also have both sales tax and withholding tax applicable at the same time. So that scenario will also be there. Let's see how that scenario will work. Okay, I will just create a new invoice quickly for explaining that scenario, how that works. Click on new, select a vendor invoice journal, go to lines. Then select the Tata company vendor, invoice date as of today's date itself. I'll just call it as INV 399. Credit the vendor for 10,000. You can select an offset account. It's like the same expense or some other expense, insurance expense account, let's say. So you have one sales tax group applicable here. Automatically it is defaulting from the vendor. You can also give an item sales tax group here, like all. So 12% tax will be calculated. So see the amount of tax calculated is 12%, 12,000, sorry, 1,200. And you can see it here. 6% CGST, 6% SGST, total of 600 and 600. 1,200 is being calculated. Okay. Then you can post this invoice. You can see the voucher here. Accounts payable account is credited with total 11,200. Means 10,000 of original amount plus 1,200 tax sales tax amount. Insurance expense is debited for 10,000 and sales tax receivable is debited for 1,200. Okay, now you are liable to pay the vendor 11,200. And let's see how the withholding tax will be calculated at this scenario. I'm going to payment journal. I'm going to make a payment. Vendor payment journal and lines. You can select the vendor account, Tata company. Then you can go to settle transactions. Select that invoice for settlement where it is here. Click on this and you see something. Invoice 999, settled amount in invoice currency 11,200, withholding tax code 5% is applicable and the amount is 500. See, withholding tax is calculated on the base amount of invoice only, not on the sales tax amount. Only on the 10,000 amount, the 500 tax is calculated. So if you want to see how it is calculated, you can go to this option, withholding tax. Here you can see invoice amount is 11,200, within which sales tax amount is 1,200. So invoice amount excluding sales tax in the invoice currency is 10,000. On that invoice amount excluding sales tax, withholding tax 5% is calculated, and you can see 500 is the calculated withholding tax. Okay. So now you can go to overview. I'll just remove this cash discounts. I could have removed it at the invoice level itself. Let's see, there should not be any discount. Okay. Now there is 500 withholding tax. Okay. Then what will be the payment amount here, guys? If at all we are going to pay this particular invoice of the vendor. 10,700 means excluding the 500 from this 11,200, you will pay the amount to the vendor. Let me click on OK. Here it is 10,700. We're going to pay to the vendor. The vendor is debited for 10,700. Go to offset account, select the ICICI Bank. Method of payment, I'll just select it as electronic since we don't have to generate anything here. Send. Then let me post it. Post it. If you go to the voucher, so you have accounts payable account being debited with 10,700. So on the base amount of invoice, you just deducted 500 and you paid the taxes. 1,200 taxes you paid to the vendor already. Sales tax you have paid. But withholding tax is withheld with the business. So we'll see that entry that you can click here and click on all related vouchers, or related vouchers means it will show the single voucher of withholding tax. If you click on all related vouchers means it will show both the vouchers. So you see this additional voucher with the generic voucher number, accounts payable being debited with 500, withholding tax payable account credited with 500. The 500 of the accounts payable is transferred to withholding tax payable, but the vendor is, or the accounts payable account is reversed with total 11,200. There won't be any pending amount on the invoice, but the one that you withheld 500 you have to pay to the tax authority. That's all. So this is clear for all of you. Any confusion in this? Application of both sales tax and withholding tax at this point. Then you can also check the withholding taxes posted in the tax module. Here it is. So in the inquiries and reports, you have withholding tax inquiries. Here you can see posted withholding tax. This place. Click on posted withholding tax. It will show you two transactions for the posted withholding tax. 500 and 500. I posted two times, right? So in the one vendor payment voucher, another vendor payment voucher. So in both of them you have 10,000 as the origin amount and 500 as the calculated tax. Totally 1,000 tax. That's all. Have some reports. That's all. Small report for withholding tax transactions. You can generate this report and it will give you the details. In recent, we also have this declaration for withholding taxes where you can declare and pay the withholding tax as well. So normally you don't have such kind of option here in this particular module here where you don't have that new features enabled. There what you have to do is at the end of a month you have to pay the amount that is there in the withholding tax account. You whatever is credited to the withholding tax account you will pay it to the authority. So you will debit the authority and credit the withholding tax payable account, which would reverse the withholding tax payable amount at the time of raising an invoice for the authority. And during the payment, you know, right, making a payment and settling that invoice. It's normal how it is. So now you have this liability account, right, withholding tax payable. Let's say suppose withholding tax payable 1,000 is there in the balance sheet. It's a liability. So you can say credit balance is there for 1,000. So what you will do is same will be debited when you are going to settle it. Debited with 1,000, and what is credited here? Tax authority. Whoever is there, the withholding tax authority will be credited. If you raise an invoice or if you directly make a payment, I think your bank account will get credited directly. Withholding tax payable, like you are reversing the liability and making a payment from the bank directly. So this could be the entry if you directly make a payment through the bank, or if you want to book an invoice and then make a payment, you will have tax authority here, which is created initially. During the payment entry, again tax authority will be debited with 1000, which is reversed, and your bank account is created with 1000. This is payment entry. In case if you are booking an invoice initially for the withholding tax and making a payment, or if you are not booking an invoice, this tax authority will not come into picture at all. Directly withholding tax payable will be reversed, 1000 amount of liability will be reversed, and bank account will be created with 1000, not 10,000. 1000. That's how the further operations would be like. If a finance functional consultant, you should understand how the things function or how the settlements are done. So that would be all about the withholding taxes.